In the quiet town of Cedar Grove, darkness lingered beneath the surface, unsuspected by its residents. One fateful autumn evening, a group of friends decided to explore the infamous old Woodside Manor, an abandoned house shrouded in local legend. Ignoring the superstitions that filled the air, they armed themselves with flashlights and bravado, eager for a night of adventure and thrill. As they creaked open the door, a chilling wind swept through the dimly lit hall, the scent of mildew and decay invading their senses. Shadows danced on the walls as they ventured deeper, their laughter echoing in the empty rooms. Yet an unsettling feeling crept in. A lurking presence seemed to follow them closely, sending shivers down their spines. The chill was more than just the cool air of the decrepit house. It was something malicious, a whisper from the beyond. In one of the bedrooms, they discovered a dusty mirror, its surface cracked and mottled with age. One among them, more curious than the others, stepped forward and wiped the grime away. The reflection that stared back was not their own. Instead, it revealed a ghostly figure, pale and anguished, trapped behind the glass. Panic surged through the group as they pulled away from the mirror. But the feeling of being watched intensified, and the air grew heavy with dread. As they stumbled into the hallway, the front door slammed shut with an ear-splitting bang. Their frantic attempts to escape were met with chaos. Doorways twisted and seemed to vanish into new, unrecognizable paths. Their flashlights flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced like phantoms among them. In that moment, the friends realized they were not alone. The restless spirits of Woodside Manor had awakened, eager to reclaim their domain. Desperation set in as the sound of soft whispers filled the air, calling their names in a ghostly chorus. Each step they took felt heavier, as if the very house was pulling them back, drawing them into its dark embrace. With their hearts racing and fear encasing them, they finally found a way out, tumbling out into the night air, gasping for breath. Woodside Manor stood ominously behind them, a chilling reminder of the terror they had encountered. To this day, the friends are haunted by the experience, a reminder that some places hold secrets too dark to uncover. They learned the hard way that curiosity can lead to more than adventure. It can awaken horrors best left undisturbed. In the silence of the night, in the frozen heart of the Ural Mountains, a group of adventurous souls embarked on a journey that would lead to their mysterious demise. The Dyatlov group, comprised of experienced hikers, arrived at the foot of Mount Kolatshakal on January 28, 1959, eager to conquer the natural beauty that lay before them. They set up camp amidst the chilling winds and towering pines, unaware that they were about to become part of one of the most baffling mysteries in hiking history. On January 31st, their ambition led them toward the summit of Mount Otorten. With each step, they were enveloped in the haunting serenity of the snow-laden slopes. That night, they would make camp once more. But this would be the last time they would know the warmth of fellowship beneath the night sky. The following day, as hope shimmered with the bright daylight, the group began their descent, but they vanished, swallowed by the expanse of wilderness, never to return to civilization. The eerie silence of the snow-covered landscape spoke volumes. As investigations unfolded, Soviet authorities arrived, scouring the area with diligent eyes. Among the chilling discoveries, a tent was found grotesquely ripped from the inside, a testament to a sudden and desperate escape. Precious belongings littered the snow, offering tantalizing clues yet leaving more questions than answers. Autopsy reports unveiled grim truths, injuries, suggesting a violent force had swept over them, with one member mysteriously stripped of her tongue, an unexplainable horror that deepened the enigma. Numerous theories danced in the minds of curious souls. Was it the savagery of a Yeti, perhaps a clandestine military experiment, gone awry? Or had infrasound induced pure panic? Nature's fury in the form of an avalanche seemed plausible too, yet none could fully account for the bizarre circumstances. Each theory seemed to spark imagination while failing to uncover the grim reality, leaving a pall of intrigue hanging like fog over the fateful site. The legacy of the Dyatlov Pass incident transcends its tragic origins. It serves not just as a grim reminder of the wilderness's unpredictable nature, but as a potent emblem of human curiosity and adventure. Countless narratives, including books, films, and documentaries, have arisen from its shadow, stirring debates and inspiration in equal measure. As we reflect on this haunting story, we find ourselves pondering the delicate balance between exploration and the unknown, a legacy woven into the fabric of mountaineering. The truth of what transpired in those unforgiving mountains may remain elusive, locked away in the icy grip of time. But the story of the Dyatlov group lingers on, capturing the imagination of adventurers and mystery seekers alike. It is a chilling saga of fate, exploration, and the haunting question of what truly lies beyond the edge of civilization. Everyday routines can feel familiar and safe until something disturbs that sense of security. As I went about my daily life, an unsettling sensation began to creep into my mind. It started subtly, almost like a whisper, at the back of my thoughts, suggesting that I was being watched. At first, I dismissed it as mere paranoia, a product of an overactive imagination. Little did I know I was not mistaken. It began one evening when I noticed a man standing across the street from my home, a shadow against the setting sun. He was always there, his figure framed by the dusk, lurking like a specter in the waiting. His face was obscured. I could only make out the contours of his frame and the faint glow of his eyes reflecting the fading light. Each night he would stand in that same spot, silently observing. As I went about my routines, his presence seemed to claw at my mind, drawing my attention and igniting a sense of dread. As days turned into weeks, I tried to ignore him, convinced that my fears were illusory. However, my attempts to live normally became increasingly futile. I felt the weight of his gaze every time I stepped outside. It was as if he were threading himself into the fabric of my existence, a phantom lingering at the edges of my reality. I began to alter my routines, venturing out only when necessary. But he was never far behind, always watching, always waiting. Fear morphed into obsession. I would wake in the dead of night, heart pounding, certain that I could sense him lurking just outside my window. I decided to confront this eerie shadow, convinced that acknowledgement would dispel the haunting. One evening I gathered courage and approached the spot where he stood each night, but he was gone, vanished, as if he were nothing more than the trick of a fading light. However, the next day, the weight of his gaze returned, heavier than ever. Panic surged within me, a nightmarish realization that he thrived on my fear. I rushed to the authorities, but they dismissed my reports as mere delusions. I was left with no refuge, no sanctuary from the intangible horror that gripped my life. Each night as I lie in bed, the chilling thought remains. I know he watches, waiting for something else, something darker. Perhaps it is my sanity or the tranquility of my life. The horror doesn't sleep, and neither will I until I uncover the truth behind the eyes that follow me. In a quiet town where the lull of routine masked the shadows, a chilling tale awaited discovery. It began with an old, decrepit house untouched by time, resting on the outskirts, holding secrets deeper than its crumbling facade. Curiosity led a group of friends to venture inside one fateful evening. Armed only with flashlights, they pushed open the creaking door, sending echoes through the empty halls. The air grew heavy with an ominous chill as they stepped into the eerie silence, the faint scent of decay lingering like a ghost from the past. As they explored the dimly lit rooms, whispers seemed to intertwine with the wind, drawing them further into the heart of the house. Each room held remnants of forgotten lives, dusty furniture, faded photographs, and an inexplicable heaviness, as if the very walls were watching their every move. One friend, drawn to a partially open door, crept closer, his heart racing with both dread and excitement. Behind the door lay a staircase spiraling down into darkness, its presence both inviting and foreboding. Unable to resist, he called out to his friends, and together they descended into the unknown. The basement, shrouded in darkness, felt like a different world altogether. Cobwebs clung to the air, and an unsettling stillness enveloped them. As they flicked their flashlights across the space, a sudden movement caught their eyes. A shadow darted across the far wall, sending shivers down their spines. Panic rippled through them as they turned to leave, but the door slammed shut. Trapped in the cold embrace of the basement, they struggled against the door. The whispers returned, now louder, more insistent, coiling around them like a serpentine embrace. Terrified, they searched for another way out, realizing they weren't alone. The sensation of being watched intensified, and the shadows danced in the flickering light of their torches. With relentless determination, they pounded on the door and screamed for help, their voices mingling with the whispers that echoed around them. Despair weighed heavily on them until, at last, the door creaked open, revealing nothing but an empty hallway. With hearts racing, they fled, leaving behind the whispers and the shadows. From that day forward, the house stood silent, yet the echoes of their experience lingered. In the air, a haunting reminder of the darkness that resides just beyond the veneer of our reality. And in quiet moments, they could still hear those whispers, calling them back to the shadows, where they may not escape a second time. On an ordinary evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet street. As I settled into my routine, a chilling sensation pricked at the back of my neck, as if a pair of unseen eyes lingered on my every move. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, who could possibly take interest in me? Yet night after night, that same unsettling feeling crept back, like fog rolling in to envelop a darkened home. One fateful night, I caught a glimpse of him, an indistinct figure lingering across the street, partially obscured by the dim light of a flickering lamppost. His stare pierced through the darkness, fixating on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I remember feeling a rush of dread, a primal instinct urging me to flee. But as I stood frozen, a realization struck me. He was watching me, not just tonight, but every single day. My heart raced as I recalled the strange occurrences, the missing garden decorations, the faint footprints in the driveway, and the unsettling silence that followed when I returned home. Frantically, I sought comfort within familiar walls, locking windows and securing doors, convinced that safety lay within my own sanctuary. Yet the feeling of unease seeped through the cracks. Days turned into weeks as I entered a state of relentless anxiety. Friends dismissed my fears, labeling them as figments of an overactive imagination. But their laughter only deepened my sense of isolation, urging me to retreat deeper into myself, where fears festered like an open wound. As twilight began its daily descent, he returned like clockwork, hidden in the shadows. As I paced nervously within my home, I resolved to confront this specter, to shine light upon the creeping darkness that had wormed its way into my life. But the walls felt confining, and every rustle outside made my heart race. I devised a plan to capture evidence of his lingering presence, fumbling with my phone in the dim glow of my living room, trying to shake off the paralyzing fear. One night I dared to glance outside, armed with the courage born from desperation. What I saw sent a jolt of terror through me. His featureless face, devoid of eyes, remained fixed on my window, an eternal witness to my growing despair. The walls whispered secrets, as I realized my life had become a horror story, woven by the unseen thread of a man who watched me every day. In the dim light of a flickering candle, the whispers of forgotten stories echo through the shadows. Real horror lies not only in fiction, but in those spine-chilling tales that keep us awake at night. One such story begins on a seemingly ordinary night when a family begins to hear soft tapping at their windows. As the hours pass, the tapping grows louder, morphing into desperate scratching. Frantic and filled with dread, they decide to investigate, only to find eerie handprints smeared against the glass. Yet no one is there. The terror sinks into their bones when they discover that the prints belong to someone who had disappeared from their town years ago, leaving behind a chilling mystery that remains unsolved. The second tale unfolds in a desolate old hotel, where guests report hearing laughter in empty hallways and seeing apparitions of children playing. One skeptical traveler dismisses these tales, convinced they are merely figments of overactive imaginations. However, through the night, he is awakened by the sound of children giggling nearby. Feeling a chill creep up his spine, he ventures out of his room to find an empty corridor. As he wanders through the darkness, a ghostly figure appears, a child with hollow eyes that pierces through the very fabric of his sanity. The laughing turns into a deafening wail as he retreats, leaving him haunted and forever marked by the experience. Then there is the tale of a woman who receives a series of unsettling messages from an unknown number. At first, the messages seem benign, reminders of her daily tasks, weather updates. But as the days turn into weeks, the tone shifts ominously, with cryptic references to her daily life that she never shared with anyone. Paranoia envelops her as she learns of a nearby murder and realizes the messages have eerie connections to the victim's life. One night, she hears a soft knock at her door, and the messages flash in her mind. Could the sender be waiting just outside, watching her every move? These stories linger long after they are told, drawing us into realms of fear and uncertainty. They remind us that the scariest monsters are often not those in fiction, but those rooted in chilling reality, lurking within the shadows of our everyday lives. Each tale carries with it an echo of truth that chills us to the core. With every whispering wind and creaking floorboard, we are reminded that the darkness holds many secrets, waiting to spill their stories into the light. Every day, as the morning sun pierced through the curtain, I felt a familiar chill creep over my spine. He was there. I could sense his presence, lurking outside my window, a figure shrouded in mystery, watching my every move. At first, I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination. Perhaps I was simply paranoid, but the feeling of being observed grew stronger, leaving me feeling vulnerable and exposed in my own home. The first encounter was subtle. I noticed him standing a few houses down, seemingly engrossed in a newspaper. Just a man, I thought, but as I glanced back, his eyes were fixed on me, piercing through the distance. My heart raced, a primal instinct kicking in as I pulled the curtain shut, blocking out the unsettling gaze. Still, the sensation lingered, a gnawing fear gnashing at the edges of my mind, warning me to stay vigilant. Days turned into weeks, and he became a fixture in my routine. I could map my schedule with his appearances. Each morning, a silhouette cast against the backdrop of my ordinary life. Unnerving patterns began to emerge. He was always there. Whether I was watering the plants or sipping coffee on the porch, I avoided the windows. But the instinct to look was overpowering. I would peer through the blinds and find him unfazed, a ghost of anxiety tethered to my thoughts. I decided to take action. I approached my neighbors, sharing my growing dread, but they laughed it off. "It's probably just someone waiting for a bus," they would say, but their laughter faded into a distant echo against the rising tide of my fear. With each passing day, the comfort of familiarity was replaced by a heavy sense of dread, as if an unseen predator stalked its prey. One evening, the wind howled through the trees, and the room was steeped in darkness. I felt compelled to look out one last time. This time, he was closer. Mere feet from my door, a frozen figure bathed in the glow of the streetlight. My breath hitched as I stumbled back, heart racing. I could see him clearer now, the hollow eyes, a twisted smile that sent chills cascading down my spine. In that moment, reality slipped through my fingers, and I was left shivering in the grasp of my deepest fears. Who was he? Why was he watching me? I resolved to uncover the truth, even if doing so meant stepping into the shadowy unknown, where nightmares mingle with reality. Every day when the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the neighborhood, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. It started as a simple, unsettling sensation, a whisper of fear that things weren't quite as they seemed. There was a man, always positioned just outside my line of sight, lurking at the edges of my world, as if I were the protagonist in a macabre tale of suspense. As nights wrapped the community in a shroud of darkness, the atmosphere thickened with dread. I would often catch glimpses through the window of a figure clad in tattered clothing, standing motionless across the street. His presence felt otherworldly, piercing the veil of my comfort with an insatiable curiosity. I would rush to shut the curtains, my heart pounding like a drum, but the whispers of his existence echoed in my mind long after. My imagination danced with horrific scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. Days turned into weeks, and the man's haunting presence became an unwelcome routine. It felt as though he was feeding on my fear, savoring the way I flinched at the slightest sound or shadow. Was he merely watching, or was he waiting for the perfect moment to make his presence known? Each night grew colder and darker, mirroring the fear festering within me. I started going out less, consumed by paranoia, avoiding any potential encounters. Yet the feeling of being watched remained, even within the confines of my home. Then, one fateful evening, as the winds howled a chilling lullaby, I decided enough was enough. I steeled my nerves and took a stand. Armed with a flashlight, I stepped outside, squinting into the murky void, where the man had stood for so long. Silence enveloped me, thick and suffocating. The streetlights flickered ominously, casting jagged shadows that danced around me. And just then I saw him, standing amidst the darkness, no longer a figure at the edge of my perception, but wholly real, his gaze piercing through to my very core. In that instant, I realized the truth. He wasn't here to harm me, but rather to feed off my terror, thriving in the havoc he'd wreaked upon my mind. I turned and fled, heart racing, knowing I had unwittingly become a prisoner of my own imagination. The man in the shadows remained, elusive and haunting, an eternal reminder that sometimes the greatest horrors lie not in the physical world, but in the corners of our minds.